This is In Focus. I'm John Lieberman. We're here today with a very special guest, Brian Roach, the head of regulated industries for SAP North America, including public sector. And Brian, I know we want to tackle a lot about how government organizations from federal to local have been impacted by COVID-19. First of all, good to see you. I trust you're staying well.
Yes, John. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. So let's get into it. I mean, you look at the headlines. The news is full of stories about governments struggling to respond to this. Big question is, what are you hearing from your customers? How is this impacting them? What are they struggling with?
Well, I think, John, much like we all are a little bit, we're all kind of struggling with the new normal. What is our new work style? How are we going to be productive and maximize our time and make sure that we're the most productive? I think they're in the same boat in many ways. I think what we see is, you kind of see the have and have not scenarios in government where, you have certain agencies that were well prepared for mobile work, were kind of already mobile, were modern in their platforms, had access, and so they probably had very little impact. Whereas others that are, they don't have laptops, they work at a workstation all day, or they're very paper driven. There's so many regulations and forms that are still paper driven, that have to be signed, wet ink, those types of things. You see those challenges come out probably more than anything in terms of the impact on productivity. And frankly, I think is also dictating, for government workers who are critical, who need to be working in the office because they just don't have the ability to operate remotely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you use the term is used, digital government. Question I have for you is it that the public sector is kind of so far behind on the digital government side than the private sector for obvious reasons that we don't have to go in? Is this spotlighting that in a way?
It's interesting. I think, the government is such a large, complex, and, a set of services and institutions that I think, the experience really varies. I'd say, my experience, over the years is that, there's always an element of government that is leading edge. They're always leading edge. If you think about some of the technological evolutions and things like just that we're operating on the internet today in our homes, those were government innovations. So there's always that leading edge organization or a set of leading edge organizations that are driven there, right? And then there are others, whether it be through budget or regulatory, that, tend to lag. And I think, so it's really hard to kind of put them all in one box and compare them to commercial, because I would argue I have customers who are doing far better today than a lot of commercial companies that my counterparts are dealing with within SAP. I would say that they've managed the transition better, they're being productive. And candidly, as we look at the business profile for the next, let's say, 3 quarters, I would say the government businesses are going to be the most stable. They're going to be less impacted in the near term by the economic impact of the pandemic, right? Because
of the active role that government must take in the response, whether it's right. CDC, agriculture, is that right?
Absolutely. And military, right? The military is so active, the strategic stockpile, and the areas where we're so deeply involved with them. But those are the areas that when we talk about digitization and productivity, they've shined throughout this. And of course, we're very proud to be part of that. But they've done extraordinarily well, right, in moving all this material and manpower and, temporary hospitals. I mean, they've just done an extraordinary job in this crisis.
Is this crisis going to kind of force, I use the word force loosely, but force government at all levels now to digitize? Because the way I sort of hear you say it is, it's kind of the haves and the have-nots. It's the agencies that have invested over the years and are at the top of their game, even on par with many privates, as you said. But then it's kind of the ones that have been lagging behind, maybe for budget reasons or whatever reasons.
Yeah, there's absolutely no question. I think there's no way that we can exit this situation and not learn from it, build a new set of features, functions, and capabilities for our agencies than were there before. There's no question that will change. I think what's interesting is I think we're going to see the value of citizen experiences, their need to interact with citizens in a different way. You can't walk in, or you haven't been able to walk into a Social Security office to receive a check. I mean, you have to be able to transform how you're interacting with the citizenry. I think how the government analyzes the immense amount of data that they have. I think, the ability to really mine that data, learn from it, expose it, and turn that into actionable things and to improve government and improve government operations in general. I say there's no question that things will change going forward, and for the better. I think we come out of this, we're going to be much stronger. I think we're obviously going to be a lot smarter. It's easy to be armchair quarterbacks today, but I think the difference will be in the future, those that act as a result of what they've learned and those that don't act as a result of what they learned. That'll be the difference maker going forward.
You touched on something really interesting, Brian, that I wanted to flesh out a little bit more, and that is we always hear in the private sector about customer experience, right? But generally speaking, I think it's safe to say in the public sector, at least historically, the image like of the DMV or, interactions with government haven't exactly been focused on customer experience. Is this going to change that in large part because now there's going to be so many more, digital touch points with government?
Yeah, I love. We always pick on DMVs.
Yeah, I know that wasn't
fair, but I absolutely understand. And again, that's one of those legacy processes where it required a lot of touch and interface. But there's no question. I think governments have changed their focus in two dimensions actually. One, the citizen experience. I think we've been seeing. I think as the government got to the web and we started seeing, how even IRS interacting with their citizens in a different way, digital interactions, digital transactions. That has been improving over the years. It's getting to the next level of that. It's getting to where it's far more integrated, far more capable, far more organic to the functions of those departments, as opposed to just thin layers of, you fill in a static website and up goes that information and somebody takes that and hand codes that into a system. These are all going to be connected front to back, right? And then understanding how those citizens are reacting, how they're interacting with your systems is going to be critical, I think, for usage, for future evolution, so that you can rifle shot target your innovation so that you're not, what you think you may know to improve interaction, as opposed to what you actually know, so that you can be very, very focused on where you spend your money and how you fix those systems to interact with your populace. I think those things will be happening. And then also, I think the government has become very, very interested because, listen, we're going through the silver tsunami in government employees, right? Much like we are in a lot of industries, and understanding the employee experience, right? So we're seeing the government take up and we're seeing the establishment of experience officers within chief customer officers, chief experience officers within government agencies, and they have two-dimensional roles, right? Internal and external.
Yeah, you don't think of all the layers here. And the other thing is, you watch the news and you always see, that's why I thought it was great that you pointed out that many government agencies, or at least a lot of them, are really ahead of the curve, because obviously you see the stories about unemployment sites crashing and people can't get their benefits and things like that.
Right.
Are you seeing a lot of difference between, say, local, state, and federal government in terms of how they're reacting here?
I think obviously local or frontline, right? They're the people, rubber and road. They're touching the citizens every day. I think the most dedicated civil servants you're ever going to meet, I think, exist at the local and state levels because they touch us so closely. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, I think, they're in the front lines with, all the things that are emerging, tech testing. The other, maybe a federal level of government is somewhat insulated from that kind of visceral interaction with the citizenry. So there's no question that we see differences of interaction. I think we're going to see, post-event financial burdens at the lower levels of government. The federal support will become very important because these guys are really carrying a heavy load right now. But in the end, much like federal government, we had a lot of really well-run counties and cities, really, technologically cutting edge, really thinking about data-driven decision-making, citizen interaction. I mean, so there's examples of that all over the country. And some areas, wealthy counties, wealthy cities, obviously can do more maybe than, again, the have and have not scenarios, right? More rural areas don't necessarily have the same digital capabilities that maybe some of the more dense urban areas do.
And I'm just curious, when you talk to your customer, the public sector, were they always has this kind of expedited their decision making and putting budget toward this idea of digital government, or were they kind of always thinking they were going to get there, but this has sort of forced, their hand?
Much of this will be reactive. I think we're exposing, areas that we never thought we would need, knowledge or information, and where, would help us, be a little bit more predictive and proactive about situations of this ilk, right? When we talk about the stockpile predictions, I mean, who could have made those predictions, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I'd say it's probably highlighted some things. I think this will be something that gets corrected over time. It's not going to be immediate. There's not a silver bullet. There's not an easy button that you press and all of a sudden you're digitized and smart and data driven and citizen centric. But I think it's a journey, and I think it's a journey that we will all get on together. I think we're all part of this, right? I mean, industry and public sector alike. I think we're gonna learn a lot and how we address things of this nature going forward, right? It's not necessarily a pandemic. It could be the storm season again, right? We had a horrible storm season last year. Emergency response, our interaction between local agencies and FEMA. How can industry be part of that? I think these are the types of things that hopefully educate us, but also, bring us a little bit closer as a community of citizens, right?
Is that what keeps you up at night, the idea of maybe the what happens next? And are we, from a technology standpoint, are we equipping our customers with at least the knowledge, even if they can't execute it right now, at least the knowledge of what could come next and how they could sort of counteract that? Is that the big thing that sort of keeps you up at night?
Well, I think, I'll be honest, really keeps me up at night is making sure that our systems are up and running today, when they need them the most, right? I mean, you have to make sure that you're producing, industrial strength, bulletproof systems that can survive, power and all the things that we're encountering, the massive load. I joke, but all the teenagers are home now. They're not in school. They're downloading. They're on your Netflix. Well,
I have one downstairs. So if this starts to go slow, it's because he's streaming something.
Well, but so the government's in the same boat, right, as are our government employees. So we want to make sure our systems are highly resilient and durable. So that's what keeps me up at night primarily. Secondarily, I think, is where do we go next? What is the next right thing to do? Where is the next priority that we should have? And of course, it varies, as we talk about health agencies as opposed to, law enforcement agencies, as opposed to infrastructure, the roads, sewer, water, all of those things. It does vary a bit, but the bottom line is, is really about making sure that we're doing the next right thing once we identify where their challenges were, what information they may have needed, where we can help and be relevant, right? Because we're not always going to be helpful and relevant, or relevant. We'll always try to be helpful, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is relevant to their mission and that you can help them succeed.
Last question I have for you, Brian, then we'll let you go get back to your customers. What's the single biggest maybe surprise that has come out of this for you, either in terms of what your customers are saying to you or what the reaction's been, or has nothing really surprised you?
I wouldn't say that I've been surprised. I think maybe some thoughts that we had are being amplified. We're seeing the manifestation of the things that we believed, which were data-driven government, efficient digital government is best served, right, is best placed to serve the populace. And in the have and have not scenarios, we're seeing governments that are doing extraordinarily well, right? We're seeing hospital systems that are prepared and doing extraordinarily well, that were predictive. They're not getting overrun. They had already built up the demand. So anybody who had that ability, I think it's validated what we've been saying for years, candidly, that this will help you be better. This will help you serve your populace better. And so we're getting those data points validated, and I would say the counter is also true, right? Those that were unprepared are not doing as well, but candidly, the human spirit and hard work is an amazing thing, and you'll see people who may not have all the tools available to them do heroic things to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, in the public sector, they don't get a ton of credit for it.
They don't.
Really speaking, for all of the hard work that they do, regardless of how their technology is, right?
That's right. Right. I agree. And, you look at all the frontline people, that we have in fire, police, healthcare. I mean, with or without technology, those people are going to be heroes. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. Brian Roach, head of regulated industries for SAP North America, including, of course, the public sector. Brian, thanks for your time. And I know you're super busy, so thanks for taking the time.
John, thank you. Really appreciate it.